Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Today we talking about restoring trust in science and health. In today's fast-pacing digital world, information is everywhere. We scroll through endless feeds of health tips, scientific discoveries, breakthrough studies, and bold claims. It's easy to feel like we're knowledgeable. We absorb facts, memorize headlines, and repeat statistics. But here's the truth. Knowledge alone does not equal control over your health or your life. Information is only powerful when it is fully understood, when it resonates with your experience, and when it becomes part of your decision-making in real time. That's where understanding comes in. And that's where real trust begins. We've reached an era where many people know what a hormone is, what dopamine does, or why sleep matters. But knowing about something is not the same as understanding it. Understanding comes when you grasp not only what something does, but how it affects you and why it matters in your daily life. It's the difference between being told to get sunlight in the morning and actually knowing how that light cues your brain to release cortisol at the right time, setting your circadian rhythm and giving you energy throughout the day. That level of insight changes behavior. It builds trust not in a person or a trend, but in the biological systems you carry within you. When we look at health systems, educational systems, even scientific institutions, one major disconnect is this. They often provide data, but they don't build understanding. People are told what to do without being shown why it works. That breeds skepticism, resistance, and confusion. If someone is handed a protocol and told, this is what's good for you, but they can't feel the impact or they don't understand the science behind it, that advice rarely sticks. It becomes another abandoned routine. But when someone truly understands, when they grasp the why and the how behind what they're doing, they begin to own the process. That's when change becomes sustainable. Take, for example, the nervous system, a powerful driver of behavior, emotion, and resilience. When someone understands that their body's stress response isn't a weakness, but a finely tuned survival mechanism, they stop fearing anxiety. They learn how to regulate it. They begin to see how breath, posture, and even eye movement can shift their internal state in real time. That understanding gives them not just awareness, but agency. It removes the mystery from the body and replaces it with confidence. That's not just healing, that's empowerment. This kind of empowerment is especially important in restoring trust, because people who feel powerless will always seek control through other means, shortcuts, hacks, or dogmatic beliefs. But people who understand their biology don't need to rely on guesswork or fear-based thinking. They develop a grounded sense of what works for them and why. That's how trust is rebuilt. Not by blind belief in experts, but by direct experience rooted in clear, accessible science. Understanding also allows for adaptability. When someone truly understands a concept, they can adjust it to fit their own life. They don't panic when a routine changes or when circumstances shift. They adapt because they know the principle behind the practice. They know that if they can't exercise for an hour, even 15 minutes of movement can still trigger a cascade of neurological and physiological benefits. That flexibility keeps them engaged, it keeps them consistent, and ultimately it keeps them connected to the science in a very human way. The goal then is not to turn people into scientists. It's to invite them to think like scientists of their own lives, to observe, test, reflect, and refine. When understanding becomes the foundation, trust becomes unshakable, because people are no longer at the mercy of trends or fear. They are led by insight. For far too long, health has been seen through a narrow lens. Society has conditioned people to equate health with things that can be measured on a scale or tracked with a fitness app. Weight, calories, steps, heart rate. But this reductionist view ignores the profound truth that health is not only physical. Real health is a complex, living integration of the body, the mind, the emotions, and even the human spirit. To restore trust in health, we must return to this holistic view, where the nervous system, the emotional core, and even the sense of meaning in life are considered just as essential as muscles or metabolism. The physical body is tangible. We can see it change. We can measure our progress in how fast we run, how deep we sleep, or how strong we feel. And that's powerful. But how often do we stop to consider how much our thoughts shape our biology? How much our emotional state influences digestion, immunity, or inflammation? Science shows us that chronic stress, loneliness, and emotional suppression aren't just uncomfortable, they're toxic. They weaken the body from the inside. They shift hormonal balance, alter brain chemistry, and erode resilience. In other words, you cannot separate the emotional from the physical without creating an incomplete picture of health. One of the most important, yet often ignored, aspects of human health is the state of the nervous system. When the nervous system is dysregulated, when it's stuck in a loop of fight, flight, or freeze, even the best diet or exercise plan won't lead to lasting vitality. People may follow a perfect routine but still feel exhausted, anxious, or detached. That's because their nervous system hasn't been taught to feel safe. When a person doesn't feel safe, the body will prioritize survival over growth, digestion, or rest. That state of chronic threat hijacks biology. And this has nothing to do with logic. It's deeply subconscious, which is why health must include emotional awareness and nervous system regulation. Then comes the psychological dimension. The thoughts we think, the stories we tell ourselves, the beliefs we carry. These shape our biochemistry as much as any external factor. Negative self-talk isn't just a mindset issue. It influences cortisol levels, immune response, and the ability to recover from stress. On the other hand, cultivating gratitude, purpose, and self-compassion isn't just nice. It's neurochemical. The brain and body respond to our thoughts, releasing oxytocin, serotonin, and dopamine. These aren't just feel-good chemicals. They're the building blocks of healing, restoration, and resilience. The spiritual side of health is the most misunderstood, yet perhaps the most powerful. It's not about religion or rituals. It's about connection to something bigger than yourself. That might be nature, a creative pursuit, a mission, or a deep relationship. When people have a sense of purpose or meaning, they heal faster, live longer, and navigate life's storms with more strength. Meaning gives the nervous system direction. It anchors us during uncertainty. It reminds us that we are not just machines to be optimized. We are humans to be understood. Modern health must evolve. It must stop pretending that a prescription or a program can fix what is rooted in trauma, disconnection, or emotional neglect. It must honor the invisible wounds, the unspoken stress, and the deeply felt experiences that shape a person's well-being. When people are treated as whole beings, body, mind, heart, and spirit, something remarkable happens. They begin to trust again, not just in health systems or protocols, but in themselves, because they finally feel seen, they finally feel understood, and that is where real health begins. One of the greatest fractures between the public and the scientific or health communities today stems from a simple, painful truth. People don't know who or what to believe anymore. Every day, they are bombarded with conflicting advice, complicated terminology, sensational headlines, and ever-changing recommendations. Eggs are good, then they're bad. Coffee is harmful, then beneficial. One study says one thing, and the next seems to completely contradict it. This chaos breeds skepticism. And not because people are unwilling to care about science or their health, but because the system often lacks what they need most: transparency. Transparency is not just about sharing data or publishing results. It's about creating a bridge between experts and everyday individuals. A bridge built on honesty, clarity, and accessibility. Trust grows when people feel they're being spoken to, not spoken down to. When information is delivered not with arrogance or superiority, but with the genuine intent to inform and empower. When people are given both the what and the why, they begin to see that science is not about authority, it's about collaboration. And that's the shift the health world needs. The average person should not need a degree in molecular biology to understand how to improve their sleep, regulate their stress, or eat in a way that supports their well-being. They shouldn't be left to decipher medical jargon or guess at the implications of a study. They deserve explanations that meet them where they are, simple, clear, and rooted in relevance to their daily lives. When scientific communication is stripped of unnecessary complexity, it becomes a powerful tool for transformation. It stops being intimidating and starts being usable. Too often, complexity is mistaken for credibility. But real expertise lies not in how complicated you can make something, but in how simply you can explain it. When a person learns how light in the morning affects their cortisol rhythms, or how certain breathing patterns shift their autonomic state, or how the brain rewires based on repeated habits, that person is no longer a passive recipient of health advice. They become an active participant in their own healing. They begin to trust the process because they understand the logic behind it. Transparency also means admitting what we don't know. One of the biggest contributors to public distrust is the false image of certainty projected by many institutions. In reality, science is an evolving process. Health recommendations change because research deepens. That's not weakness, that's progress. But when changes are made without context or explanation, it leaves people feeling misled or manipulated. If instead, we normalize the idea that health is dynamic, that our understanding of the human body is still growing, then people will feel included in that journey rather than left in the dark. Another vital part of transparency is ownership. When health professionals or scientists make a mistake or overstate a claim, acknowledging it doesn't reduce their credibility, it reinforces it. People respect honesty far more than perfection. Trust is not built by pretending to have all the answers, but by being open about the process of seeking those answers with integrity. That kind of openness invites people in. It says, we're in this together. And that sense of shared humanity is more powerful than any data set or clinical trial. The future of health education and scientific communication must be built on dialogue, not dictation. People want to ask questions. They want to understand how things work and why certain recommendations matter. They want to feel confident, not confused. When health messages are delivered with transparency, when the evidence is presented clearly, the reasoning is laid out, and the potential limitations are acknowledged, people don't just listen, they begin to internalize, they begin to engage. And slowly, the gap between information and action starts to close. In the pursuit of better health, people often fall into the trap of thinking that massive transformation requires massive effort. They believe that unless they overhaul their entire lifestyle overnight, they won't make progress. This mindset is one of the most damaging lies that modern culture promotes. The truth is that change does not come from grand gestures, extreme routines, or temporary bursts of motivation. It comes from the quiet, consistent power of small, repeated actions. These actions may seem insignificant in the moment, but over time they create deep biological shifts, rewire the brain, and build a foundation for long-term vitality. Small habits are not just the first step, they are the most important step. The human brain is a pattern recognition machine. It thrives on consistency and predictability. When you introduce small habits into your day, whether it's 2 minutes of deep breathing, a glass of water first thing in the morning, 5 minutes of sunlight exposure, or stretching before bed, you are not just adding healthy behavior. You are training your brain to expect wellness. You are signaling safety and intention to your nervous system. These signals accumulate. They form neurological grooves that influence how you think, feel, and respond to your environment. This is how small habits gain their power, not through intensity, but through repetition. Biologically, every small positive action triggers a cascade of responses. A short morning walk activates your visual and circadian systems, telling your brain that the day has begun, boosting alertness and balancing hormones like cortisol and melatonin. A short breathwork session stimulates the vagus nerve, shifting your nervous system from fight or flight to rest and digest, lowering stress hormones and improving focus. Drinking enough water impacts cellular hydration, digestion, and brain function. None of these actions require a massive time commitment. What they require is intention and consistency. The beauty of small habits is that they are accessible. They do not demand wealth, equipment, or specialized knowledge. They do not require someone to be at peak performance. They only require the willingness to start. In a world where people often feel overwhelmed, discouraged, or disconnected from their health, the simplicity of small actions can be a lifeline. A single habit, like waking up at the same time each day, eating one more whole food meal, or reducing screen time by 10 minutes, creates a ripple effect. It proves to the brain that change is possible, and that proof builds confidence. There is also a psychological element to small habits that is often overlooked. When people set massive goals and fail to reach them, they feel shame, guilt, and frustration. That emotional weight often leads to abandoning the effort entirely. But small, achievable habits offer a different emotional experience. They create small wins, and those small wins release dopamine, the neurotransmitter of motivation and reward. The brain starts to associate health with success instead of failure. This shift is critical because it turns the process of becoming healthier into something rewarding rather than punishing. Habits are also contagious. When you introduce a single positive behavior into your life, it tends to influence other areas. For example, someone who starts walking regularly may naturally begin to crave healthier food, sleep better, or reduce their reliance on stimulants. These effects are not forced. They emerge naturally from the body's growing sense of balance and self-awareness. The body begins to trust itself again. It stops operating in crisis mode and starts functioning in a state of flow. That flow invites more positive choices, which reinforce the habit loop and deepen the transformation. Even the brain's neuroplasticity, its ability to change and adapt, is driven by repetition. Small habits create the conditions for long-term structural change in the brain. Each time you repeat a behavior, you strengthen the neural circuits associated with it. Over time, what once felt like effort becomes automatic. This is how identity is formed. You stop being someone who is trying to be healthy and start becoming someone who is healthy, because it is now embedded in your behavior, in your rhythms, and in your biology. In a world where certainty is marketed and perfection is praised, true science stands apart, not because it claims to have all the answers, but because it dares to ask the right questions. The foundation of real science is not dominance, not ego, not authority. It is curiosity. It is the relentless pursuit of understanding with the acknowledgement that what we know today may evolve tomorrow. Real science does not shout. It listens, observes, tests, adapts, and above all, it remains humble. And that humility is not a weakness. It is its greatest strength. The essence of scientific inquiry is based on an open-ended approach to knowledge. Every hypothesis is born from a question, and every answer leads to more questions. This is what sets real science apart from rigid belief systems. It does not demand blind faith. It invites exploration. It says, here's what we've learned so far, and here's what we're still discovering. This transparency is what allows science to serve humanity authentically. But when institutions or individuals start presenting science as fixed, absolute and infallible, they betray its true nature. The moment science loses its humility, it ceases to be science and becomes dogma. People often confuse confidence with certainty, but confidence in science doesn't come from pretending to know everything. It comes from the courage to admit what we don't know. It comes from publishing negative results, redoing failed experiments, adjusting theories when data no longer supports them. That process of self-correction is not a flaw. It is the very mechanism by which science grows stronger. And yet, in the public eye, changing a recommendation is often viewed as inconsistency. In reality, it is integrity. It takes courage to say, we were wrong, or we've learned more, because that honesty invites trust. Humility in science also means recognizing the limits of our current tools and understanding. The human body and brain are among the most complex systems in the known universe. There are still countless processes we do not fully understand, from consciousness to the gut-brain connection, from emotional memory to the subtle effects of environment on gene expression. A humble scientist does not dismiss what cannot yet be measured. They remain open to emerging insights, new paradigms, and unexplained patterns. They know that absence of proof is not proof of absence. This mindset allows science to remain dynamic, alive, and receptive to the full spectrum of human experience. When humility guides scientific research, it leads to better questions, more ethical experimentation, and more inclusive dialogue. It values collaboration over competition, dialogue over debate. It makes space for interdisciplinary approaches, understanding that no single field holds all the keys. A humble scientist is just as willing to learn from a clinical trial as from a tribal healer or a patient's lived experience. They do not mock what they do not understand. They investigate it. They ask why it works, how it works, and under what conditions. This is how breakthroughs are born, not through arrogance, but through open-mindedness. Humility also requires the ability to separate ego from outcome. In the scientific world, it's tempting to want your theory to be right, your study to prove the hypothesis, your name to be attached to a discovery. But science is not about personal victory. It is about collective progress. A humble scientist celebrates the truth, even if it contradicts their original idea. They are willing to let go of what doesn't hold up under scrutiny. That detachment from ego is what keeps the pursuit of knowledge pure and useful. In the realm of health, humility is especially critical. Every body is different. Every mind is unique. What works for one person may not work for another. A humble approach to health science respects bio-individuality. It doesn't offer one-size-fits-all solutions. It doesn't overpromise or ignore side effects. It considers not just lab results, but lived realities. It allows room for complexity, context, and adaptation. And that is what patients and individuals need. Not a rigid prescription, but a relationship of guidance rooted in understanding. One of the most powerful truths, often overlooked in both science and health, is that the human body is not simply a machine that breaks down over time. It is a dynamic, intelligent, and self-regulating system, built with a profound capacity to repair, restore, and thrive. From the moment we are born, our bodies are constantly working to maintain balance, adapt to challenges, and recover from stressors. This isn't optimism or metaphor. It is biology. The body is wired for healing, and that truth has been demonstrated over and over in both research and lived experience. Yet, we live in a world where people are conditioned to believe they are broken, fragile, or dependent on outside intervention to be whole. That belief limits potential. It disconnects people from their natural resilience. It quiets the innate signals the body sends. And it turns health into something to fear rather than something to understand. The reality is, every system within the human body, is designed with feedback loops and mechanisms of restoration. The immune system identifies and neutralizes threats. The nervous system recalibrates between stress and recovery. The endocrine system adapts hormonal output in response to internal and external conditions. The digestive system regenerates cells rapidly to maintain gut integrity. Even the brain, once thought to be static in adulthood, is capable of remarkable neuroplasticity, rewiring itself in response to thought, behavior, and experience. This adaptability is not random or rare. It is built in. It is the norm, not the exception. This understanding shifts the entire narrative around health. Instead of asking how we can fix what's broken, we begin to ask, how can we support what is already working? How can we create the conditions that allow the body to do what it is naturally equipped to do? Healing is not about forcing the body into submission. It is about removing interference, reducing overload, and aligning with natural rhythms. When we sleep well, eat nutrient-rich foods, manage stress, breathe deeply, move regularly, and allow for emotional expression, we are not treating the body, we are cooperating with it. We are honoring its design. Even at the cellular level, healing is a built-in feature. Cells have repair mechanisms that kick in after injury. Damaged DNA is identified and corrected through intricate enzymatic processes. Mitochondria adapt energy output based on demand and availability. Tissues regenerate, sometimes remarkably, such as the liver's capacity to regrow or the skin's ability to close a wound. These aren't passive processes. They are active, deliberate, and intelligent. They are constantly happening beneath the surface, often without our awareness. And yet, our daily choices influence them profoundly. Nutrition, hydration, sleep, movement, light exposure, and mindset all serve as inputs into the healing systems of the body. It's also essential to recognize that healing is not always linear or immediate. Sometimes the body takes detours. It prioritizes certain functions over others. It asks for rest. It communicates through symptoms, not as punishment, but as guidance. Pain, fatigue, inflammation, these are not enemies. They are messengers. They tell us something is out of balance. And when we learn to listen, rather than suppress or ignore those signals, we reconnect with the body's wisdom. That connection is where real healing begins. Not from fear, but from understanding. In a medical culture that often emphasizes diagnosis, labels, and long-term dependency, this truth can feel radical. But people are not their symptoms. They are not their lab results. They are not the worst day of their health story. They are systems in motion, capable of change, capable of growth. Health is not static. It is an active relationship with our biology. And within that relationship, healing becomes a process of alignment, not correction. A process of remembering that the body is not separate from nature. It is nature, equipped with the same principles of adaptation, regeneration, and equilibrium that govern all living things. The more we reinforce this truth in education, in healthcare, in personal practice, the more empowered people become. They stop outsourcing their well-being and start participating in it. They stop waiting for a miracle and start realizing that the miracle is already within them. The body doesn't need to be taught how to heal. It needs space. It needs support. It needs to be trusted. And when it is, it responds, often in ways that defy conventional expectations and limitations placed on it by fear, doubt, or outdated paradigms.